All right, today I'm covering the 5 key things you need to be doing to dominate your first year as an SDR. I've been in enterprise software sales for over 5 years. I started as an SDR. I've worked 3 years in an account executive role, and I worked 2 years as an SDR manager. So I have worked with and coached hundreds of SDRs at this point, and these are the 5 key things that you need to be doing to go from a good rep who's maybe hitting your number to becoming a great rep with results that don't even make sense. So let's get into it. The first thing that great reps do is what I call coiling the spring. So a lot of reps show up to work each day and they think, what do I have to do today? What lists do I have to build? Who do I have to contact? What targets am I going to go after? The great reps spend a day, 2 days, even a week doing nothing but coiling the spring and building all their lists, building all their templates that associate with each list, figuring out what their top targets are, either by doing account research or working with their account executive. Do all this work up front. Don't even worry about prospecting. Spend a day, 2 days, even a week sometimes doing nothing but building all your lists. Build them by account, build them by department, build them by title, and then build templates that associate with each of those lists. So build them for your finance personas, your HR personas, your supply chain personas, whatever industry you work in, and then figure out your top targets. That way, when you sit down and it's 8 a.m. and you're not feeling great, you're feeling slow, you haven't had your coffee yet, you physically have things to do. You have your lists already built, you find your associated template, and you get your day started. This reduces friction and helps build momentum quickly. A lot of reps make the mistake of derping around the first hour or 2 of the day, which can make all the world of difference. When you coil the spring, it makes it easy to get your day going, and by 9, 10 a.m., you could have already done 100 interactions just because you had this stuff laid out for yourself. So rather than making these daily activities that you sit down and have to do each day, you should take a day, 2, I even do as much as a week of doing nothing but coiling the spring, building all my lists, building all the templates, figuring out my top targets, and I never have to think about this stuff again and can immediately get my day started. The next thing that great reps take advantage of who get results that don't even make sense is leverage. They leverage processes, they leverage the tools at their disposal, and they leverage their peers. So here's an example of processes that I had in place when I was an SDR. From 8 to 9 a.m. when I sat down every single day, I had my templates ready, I had my list built, and I just fired off emails. I'm not a big cold caller in the morning when I haven't had my coffee. I get it. Some people think that cold calling first thing in the morning is great, which maybe it is, just was never my style. So my process was to get these emails out. Usually I could get out 100 emails if I was really focused within the first hour of the day. Then towards later in the morning, call it 10:30 or 11 until lunch, so an hour, hour and a half, I would call my West Coast accounts because for them, it was early morning. So I was getting that early morning before they've really gotten their day started cold call effect. Then throughout the middle of the day, I would handle whatever items that need to be handled, whether it's working with my account team, internal meetings I have. And then at the end of the day, call it 3:30 to 5 or 4 to 5, I would call my East Coast accounts because I also think that the end of the day is a good time to cold call people. They're wrapping up their day, they're not as busy. But this was a consistent process that I followed and leveraged consistently throughout my entire time as an SDR. You also want to be leveraging the tools. If you're fortunate enough to work at a company that invests in sales automation tools, things like SalesNav, ZoomInfo, SalesLoft, these can be massive time savers and you want to make sure you're taking advantage of these. So look up tutorials on YouTube, leverage your peers, figure out how they're using these tools to the best of their ability, because I promise you, usually when a company is invested in some sort of tool like this, it's because it can be a massive value add. And then the last area is leveraging your peers. So for things like that, what processes do they use? How do they use the sales automation tools? But also leverage the top reps for things like email templates, cold call scripts, how they go about their day. I'm always shocked at how new SDRs will just turn to the first rep that's on their right, may or may not be a good rep, and say, hey, what email template are you using? Or what cold call script do you use? And they take it and they never ask another peer again, and they run with whatever they were given for 3 months. And oftentimes it's not a good script or it's not a good email template, and you're putting the rest of your hard work to waste. So not just leverage any peer, leverage the top peers, the people who are in the position you want to be, either the top SDRs in your org or the account executives that have been SDRs, did well and promoted. Make sure you're getting advice, templates, cold call scripts, processes from people who have actually been in your seat and exceeded expectations and are where you want to get to. The next thing great reps do is they take advantage of the power of compounding, the 8th wonder of the world according to Albert Einstein. And what I'm talking about here is compounding hard work. So chances are, if you found this pretty small niche channel on YouTube, my guess is you're more ambitious and hardworking than the average person out there. My channel is not being recommended to the average person on YouTube. You are probably someone who's very ambitious and wants to do well. So if you're starting early and working late, you're taking advantage of the power of compounding, even if it's just an hour or two a day. So if you think about it, the typical person works 40 hours a week, and that's generous because a lot of times they're there for 40 hours, but they're not really working or working hard for 40 hours. But let's say, keeping the numbers the same, instead of the typical person who works 40, you work 50 hours. You are working 25% more than the average person. You're getting 25% better. Your results are probably going to be 25% better on a weekly basis. So if you've seen those analogies where you double a penny every day, it turns into like millions of dollars at the end of the month. I forget what the number is. If you're taking advantage of the power of compounding on a weekly basis, you're getting 25% more done than the average SDR week by week. You are going to be miles ahead of the average SDR at the end of the quarter, never mind at the end of the fiscal year after 4 quarters. But it's not going to feel like it on a week by week or even day by day basis. Take it a step further, and if you're working 60 hours a week, so 50% better week over week, quarter over quarter, I mean, you can just multiply these numbers out. There's 12 weeks in a quarter, multiply 12 by 40 and then 12 by 50 and look at the gap between those. 12 by 40, 12 by 60, look at the gap in between those. And then 52 weeks in a year, do the same thing, and you will see how far you're gonna be separating yourself from the average SDR. The next key thing that great SDRs do, and this might be the most important one, is they nail their AE relationship, their account executive, the person you're generally gonna share the territory with. When you set meetings, this is the person who's gonna take them with you and help run the meeting and hopefully qualify it into an opportunity. And ultimately, they're usually the person who decides whether something is an op or not. So it is always important for them to be on your good side. And the way you do that is by bringing them value right out of the gate every time you meet with them. You need to have a weekly cadence set on the calendar with them. If you don't, I honestly feel sorry for you because it's gonna make your job much more difficult. So you need to get this right out of the gate. And then not only do you need to have that weekly cadence, you need to bring them value. Come with ideas. Don't just show up with a blank stare waiting to be told what to do. Because ultimately, if they're putting more work into the relationship with you, they're just going to say, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. They're encouraged to work with you, but ultimately the AE's responsibility is to close revenue. If they're closing revenue and they're hitting their quota, their manager, their boss isn't really going to care whether they're working with their SDR or not. So you need to prove to them quickly that you're someone worth investing in and is going to help them in the territory. So come with ideas. Come with ideas of what accounts to target, what you've been working on, what you were planning on working on. Don't worry about being right or wrong or whether the ideas are good or bad, especially in the beginning. They just want to see that you're bringing something, and then they'll correct you, point you in the right direction, or tell you it's a great idea. Ultimately, having a good relationship with them is going to be critical to your success as an SDR. On the flip side, and this mistake is almost as deadly, is remember that you work with them, not for them. A lot of SDRs, oftentimes it's your first job out of college or you're just very new and you have this idea in your head that your AE is senior to you. And what ends up happening is you do way too much work that only serves them and doesn't serve you, and you essentially become their assistant. You need to remember that you're generally in entirely separate orgs with different metrics that are both important to the business. So the account executive's generally responsible for closed revenue. That's the metric. That's short term. They're generally looking a quarter, 2 quarters out, what can we pull in and drive revenue for the business? The BDR, SDR role is generally about longer term pipeline. It can be short term, it can lead to closed revenue in the short term, but oftentimes it's maintaining a healthy pipeline for the business 3-4 quarters plus out, which is also important to the business, a healthy pipeline. So your metrics are just as important to the business as the AE. So don't let them boss you around. You're not their servant, you're not their assistant. You need to have an equal partnership. So you need to make it crystal clear to them what your metrics are so that they are constantly reminded of how you get paid. Don't just tell them once, especially when you're new, especially if this person, this AE, is new to the company. They oftentimes don't understand your metrics or how you get paid, and they almost think you're a consultant for them rather than someone who's in sales with an actual quota and metrics. So I would say your first 3, 4, 5 meetings with your AE, constantly remind them and go over what your metrics are, how you're tracking, how you get paid, until you're fully confident that they understand and are aware of it and are thinking about it. Because that can be the difference between a good meeting being set and that AE giving you the op or not, just because they're remembering, oh yeah, this person gets paid on opportunities. I should let them put one in the system because this was a good call. The final thing that the great reps do is everything that I was just talking about, but consistently. Consistency is the key, and that might sound obvious, but a lot of reps will say, oh, I did all this stuff 2 or 3 days this week. That's not good enough. You need to be doing it 5 days a week, every week, to really be taking advantage of the power of compounding and leverage and coiling the spring. You need to be nurturing this AE relationship every single day. You need to be adding value every single day. So it's not enough to just do 2 or 3 days. And it's tough sometimes. When I was an SDR manager, I always talked about the concept of ebbs and flows. I always said, when it's hot, it's hot. When it's cold, it's cold. When it's hot, you'll set 5 meetings that week and every meeting will be an opportunity. When it's cold, you'll go 7 meetings in a row without one of them going well and turning into a qualified opportunity. You just need to trust in your process, get better every day. If you're doing the right things every day, just know when it's cold, the hotter days are coming. I have seen it so many times. I've coached hundreds of reps. As long as you're doing the right things every day, the sun will come out again. An analogy I like to use is the best performing stock in the entire stock market the past 20 to 25 years or so. I think it's up like 100,000%, or it's been up that much, is Monster Beverage Corporation. Most people would not guess that. Google it, take a look at the chart. It is just up and to the right. Over the long term, it looks like it was a nice steady uptrend up to the right. It must have been super easy to invest in. But if you look in between, there were multiple down periods where the stock was down 40, 50%. And if you were an investor, you easily could have sold there and gotten nervous. You think the best days are behind them, but the company just kept doing the right things every single day. And when it was hot, the stock roared. When it was cold, but over the long term, it looks up and to the right. So it's the same thing with SDRs. As long as you're doing the right things every day, you're getting better, you're gonna see your results go up and to the right. So I hope this resonated. These are the things that those reps who are hitting 500, 600% of their numbers that don't even make sense, these are the things they're doing that are separating them from the rest of the pack. So hope this helped. If it did, hit the like button, and I'll see you on the next one.